This is the multiple award-winning GardenDC podcast, the podcast about everything gardening in the Washington, D.C. and Mid-Atlantic region. I'm your host, Kathy Jentz. I'm the editor of Washington Gardener magazine. Our content is aimed at gardening enthusiasts, people who grow everything from edibles to ornamentals, natives to exotics. If it grows in our area, that's what we talk about. Welcome to episode 236 of the GardenDC podcast. In this episode of GardenDC, we talk with author and naturalist Melanie Chukas-Bradley all about forest bathing. The plant profile is on caladiums, and we share what's going on in the garden as well as some upcoming local gardening events in the What's New segment. We close out with the last word on the easiest mushrooms to grow by Christy Page of Green Prints. This episode, we're joined by Melanie Chukas-Bradley, author and naturalist, and we're going to be talking all about forest bathing. Welcome, Melanie.
Thank you so much, Kathy. I'm so happy to be here with you and to celebrate your 20th anniversary with you. That is so exciting.
Thank you, Melanie. And she's talking about the 20th anniversary of Washington Gardener magazine, which we're super excited to celebrate all year long, and also happens to be the 5th anniversary of this podcast, GardenDC.
Wow. Well, congratulations on both anniversaries.
Thank you. Yeah, I hadn't even realized about the podcast 5th anniversary until I did the math that we launched during the COVID pandemic shutdown. And during the shutdown, gave me that 2 weeks break to be able to do it. So
what a wonderful thing to do during COVID, to bring this to people. You know, when people were so hungry for nature connection and connection with other nature lovers and gardeners, that was a real gift.
One of the good things to come out of the pandemic, I think, was people's reconnection with nature.
I could not agree with you more.
And I think for a lot of people, they got the value, when they were living in an apartment and realized they don't have an outdoor, even balcony space to access for those couple weeks. That was hard for a lot of people.
It was. And I think that, a lot of people learned how to go out on the balcony and, really tune into the trees and the birds outside. And the start of COVID coincided with spring's awakening in Washington. And I think, people, when they couldn't go to their workplaces and they couldn't go to restaurants and movies, they could walk in their neighborhoods or even look out their windows. And I think a lot of people really discovered a nature connection right in their own backyards.
It was almost a mini rebirth of some of the really tried and true hobbies like gardening and birding. And of course, what do we call it? Botanizing.
Botanizing.
I like that word.
I love that word.
Well, let's talk about you a little bit, Melanie, and start all the way back with baby Melanie. And were you born with chlorophyll in your veins and a green thumb?
Well, I was born at Camp Lejeune in North Carolina, and we soon moved to Vermont. So I grew up in Vermont. I had a free-range childhood in Vermont, which was wonderful. But, I love live oaks and I love Spanish moss and I love bald cypress trees. And I think I've got some baby memories of being in North Carolina. But yeah, I grew up in Vermont. I had a lot of freedom from a really young age. It was a different era back then. And I was allowed to just go off and wander in the woods and wander through the fields, look for the first spring wildflowers in April, climb the trees. We had some beautiful hemlock trees right out in front of our home, and I would spend hours up there. And, I just learned from a really young age to connect with nature, to feel the wonder, to enjoy the solitude of being in nature alone, even as a very young child. So I'm really grateful for that.
You had an idyllic childhood, it sounds like, Melanie, and I share your love of live oaks. I wish we could have them here. Maybe with climate change, we will soon.
Well, there is one on the Capitol grounds. There's a young one. The last time I checked, it was doing pretty well. So you may get your wish. It may not be for the reason that you wanted it, but yeah.
Yeah, and they do need some age on them to get that beautiful look.
Yes, they do. They are really special. But
Mhm.
sugar maples are really special too, and all kinds of magnolias and oaks. And we are so blessed in the Washington area with our incredible tree canopy.
So let's dial back to your childhood, and then where did you go to school, and did you pursue a career in writing or botany or horticulture?
I didn't, I pursued a career in writing from an early age. I went to the University of Vermont, and they have amazing environmental programs there now, but not so much when I was in school. And when I was in college, I took journalism courses and poetry and short story writing. I was an English major, so I was really focused on writing. But I continued to wander my unofficial nature education. Um, and then what happened was, do you want me to talk about when I came to Washington, when I first came to
Most
Washington?
definitely.
So that was over 45 years ago. I came here with my husband when he started law school. And I had been working as the news director for a radio station in New Hampshire. My husband Jim and I were living in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. And he started law school at Georgetown. And I thought Washington would be the perfect place for me because I was planning to be the next Connie Chung. I wanted to get a job with CBS News and be on air and be reporting from Washington. And that job did not materialize. But what happened instead is that I just fell in love with the trees. We were living on Capitol Hill, and I started wandering around the Capitol grounds and up and down the mall and, all over Capitol Hill. And coming from northern New England, there were so many trees here that I couldn't identify. And I went into a bookstore on Pennsylvania Avenue on the Hill, and I asked for a book to help me identify the trees of Washington. And when I was told there was no book, I was kind of surprised. And then the person working in the store said, "Why don't you write one?" So I spent the next 2 years working on the first edition of City of Trees. I lured my friend Polly Alexander down from Burlington, Vermont. She and I had graduated from the University of Vermont, and she was a botany major. I was an English major, but she was a botany major. And she was also an artist who, at the age of 25, had already illustrated 2 books. So she came down here, and the two of us just went around to find every tree in the city and identify it for the first edition of City of Trees. We had so much support. The director of the National Arboretum took us under his wing, and he introduced us to the botanists and horticulturists on staff who helped us with our plant IDs. And we just got incredible support from the Smithsonian, from the people working for the Park Service, from the city, the urban forestry people, DC urban forestry people. And we just worked full time for 2 years on the first edition of City of Trees. And that book has been in print now for almost 45 years in 3 different editions. And that just set me on my path to write about nature. And I've written 7 nature books since then. Some of them are field guides, some of them are nature memoirs. And I love, weaving together my love of nature and my love of writing. That's worked really well for me. And I feel very blessed and grateful.
And I think many Washingtonians are very grateful to you, Melanie, for City of Trees in particular. That is an amazing resource that every area should have, but we are super proud of it here. It
Oh,
is wonderful to have. I want to say you could put it in your pocket and take it around, but it's pretty thick.
yes, it's pretty thick. Thank you so much for saying that. I so appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. And listeners, if you don't already own a copy of City of Trees, get on that. and order your own or go to a local bookstore. Almost every local bookstore I know carries it.
Thank you so much. And we're going to be due to update it sometime soon. We don't have any particular plans for that yet, but I hope to write a new edition sometime in the next few years.
Well, we'll have to look out for that and definitely grab that new edition. And you said you have 8 published books, including City of Trees. And are you working on another aside from the update of City of Trees?
I am. I'm working on a general guide to DC, to the DC area. It's going to be a nature guide, which will have nature adventures, descriptions of species, a lot of natural history and geology. It's a very big project, and it's for Timber Press. They have done these guides to other cities. They've done Wild LA, Wild Houston, Wild Philly, and now I am working for them on Wild DC. So that is, it's really fun. And it's fun because I'm like going to a lot of my old stomping grounds, places I went when I was working on City of Trees. Well, I frequently visit most of these places anyway, but it's fun to be going back in kind of this research capacity again and looking with new eyes at everything. And this book will be not just about plants, not just about trees and wildflowers, but we're including fish and insects and amphibians and reptiles and mammals and, all living things. So, yeah, so that's what I'm working on now. And I'm also writing a lot of poetry too. So continuing to weave together my love of nature with my love of writing.
Excellent. Well, we'll look forward to Wild DC and have to have you back on the podcast when that comes out.
Oh, thank you. I'd love to come back.
Great. And let's talk a little bit about your home garden for those listeners who might not be familiar with the growing area or anything. You're in Chevy Chase.
Yes, I have to confess, I'm really not much of a gardener, Kathy. I'm more of a wanderer. And I wander in my yard. I have a beautiful yard. And I do have, perennials, and the daffodils are just done blooming now, and some of the other spring bulbs, and I have tulips coming. I have a lot of shade. Over time, the trees have really shaded places where I used to grow vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
I do grow herbs. I grow, quite a few different herbs. And I love being outside. And my husband and I, we have a little bench in the backyard, and we love to get up at dawn. We have this practice of listening to the classical music station, WETA Classical. At dawn, they play a piece of music to welcome the sun, which is just such a wonderful thing. And we will, on mornings when we have time to do this, we will listen to that piece of music, and then we go out in our backyard and we'll watch the sun. The neighbors have a very tall white pine, and we'll watch the sun light up the top of the pine tree, and then, the sunlight starts to move down the tree. We have lots of birds nesting around here, cardinals, song sparrows. The white-throated sparrows are singing now. Of course, they're going to continue to go north. We do get a lot of migrants in our yard. I discovered this after downloading the Merlin app. Do you have the Merlin app, Kathy? Do you know the Merlin app?
I'm familiar with it, but haven't used it.
It's so great. It's free, and you just turn it on, and it records every bird that is singing within range. And then it will identify the bird for you, and it actually has a little picture of the bird, and it will, flash every time the bird sings. So I've learned, so many migrants come through here, even though I live in a suburban area. I'm in Chevy Chase. I'm very close to the DC line. And then, my home garden is Rock Creek Park. I consider that my wild home, and I spend as much time there as I can. And right now, the Virginia bluebells are in full bloom. I think probably the trout lilies are a little past bloom at this point, but they have been amazing this year. And the spring beauties and the bloodroot and the cutleaf toothwort and, all the wildflowers. And then I just love to watch buds breaking, the woody plant buds when they break. So that's another thing my husband and I do. We walk around the neighborhood and we watch the buds. Every couple of days, we see how the bud scales are popping and the buds are popping open and the leaves and flowers emerging. There's just so much to see right in your own backyard and right in your neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. And that does bring us to observing the natural world and forest bathing. So let's define that term of forest bathing, because the first time I heard it, I literally thought you were taking a bathtub out to the forest. And I thought, that sounds wonderful. I want to do that.
Well, you could do that on a forest bathing walk. Yeah. So, do you want to hear a little bit about the history of it?
Absolutely.
Okay. So, it's a term, it's a translation of the Japanese Shinrin-yoku, which is a term that the Forestry Agency in Japan coined in 1982. And all it means really is immersing yourself in the beauty and wonder of nature. So the whole idea is that you slow down, you breathe, you tune in to the wonderful smells of the trees and the flowers and the soil, the earth. You listen to the birds, you listen to the wind, maybe hug a tree, you just get very close to nature with all your senses and an open heart. And so they coined this term because in Japan, especially in Tokyo, people work really long hours. There's even a term for death by work. And Tokyo's also, there are beautiful gardens in Tokyo, temple gardens and Shinto shrines, but it's a pretty intense urban environment. So they wanted to encourage people to go out to the forests because there are these amazing forests throughout Japan and this incredible network of trains to get to them. And so they started encouraging people to go out and just spend time sitting by the water, sitting under the trees, lying under the trees, just soaking up the beauty of nature. And it became such a popular practice. There are now over 60 forests in Japan that are dedicated to it. And health researchers started researching the benefits of forest bathing, and they discovered all sorts of physical and mental health benefits, which I'm happy to talk about. And then what happened was, it's like, it was just like another good idea coming out of Asia. Yoga and meditation and Tai Chi, these very calming, rejuvenating practices. This was kind of the next one to spread. And now forest bathing is popular all over the world. And it's very popular here in DC. In 2016, I was the first forest bathing guide to get certified by the Association of Nature and Forest Therapy Guides and Programs. And now we have 40 certified guides in Washington. So if you want to go on a forest bathing walk, and I can talk about, what that would entail as well. There are so many wonderful guides leading walks. There's so many opportunities for forest bathing. And also, you don't have to go on a guided walk. It's something you can just do yourself. So any of those topics I'm very happy to expand upon.
Yeah, let's explore that a little bit. But I wanted to note when you talked about the popularity that every time I go on the FONA or U.S. National Arboretum website to sign up for one of their forest bathing walks, it's filled.
Oh, I know. Well, there it is.
Yep, it is. They fill up in a hot second as soon as they're posted online. And I'm imagining that's because they're limited in size.
Well, that's the thing. You don't want to have too big a group on a forest bathing walk because you want to have, it's really kind of an intimate experience. You're sharing this time with other people. So if you have too many people on a walk, it would just kind of dilute the experience. Mm-hmm. So when I lead walks, I try to limit them to 20 people or fewer. And a lot of guides will, they won't even want to lead a walk that's that large. Mm-hmm. And I totally get that.
That makes sense. So a lot of people say forest bathing, isn't that just a walk in the woods? What's involved in the actual forest bathing experience?
Yes. So It is a walk in the woods, but it's a very mindful walk in the woods. It's all about awareness. It's all about tuning in. So when we're leading forest bathing walks, the first thing we want to do is to encourage people to slow down and slow their breathing. Breathe really deeply, and you start breathing and listening to the birds and listening to the wind and feeling how your breath connects you with all the other life around you, which it literally does. And then when we're doing guided walks, we will give what we call invitations, where we invite you to tune in to the sounds of nature, or tune in. One of my favorite invitations to give on a walk is notice what's in motion. And that sounds like such a simple thing, but it is a really powerful mindfulness exercise, because when you completely focus on what's in motion, you see so much. You'll notice an ant crawling across the ground. You'll notice, one of my favorite things to notice is the way leaves flutter. If there's just a light wind, and in a tree, different parts of the tree will kind of dance at different times. And once you kind of settle into that, it is so calming and so therapeutic. And then I have spent time in Japan. I went on a 3-week forest bathing trip to Japan in the fall of 2017. And I learned a lot from the guides in Japan. One of the really cool things I learned was, this was a guide up in the Japanese Alps taught us this. If you stand with your back to flowing water, and it can be a stream or it can just be a fountain, and you stand with your back to flowing water, you cup your ears in the front and close your eyes, the magnification of the sound of the water just fills your soul. So try that. It's pretty cool. So we do things like that, and we'll pick up stones and feel a stone in your hand, hold a stone to your face or your heart. Just very simple ways of connecting with nature. And of course, in the springtime, there are so many wonders everywhere. It's an embarrassment of riches when it comes to nature here in the spring. And it's just the perfect time to forest bathe.
Yeah, I guess it does bring up, Melanie, what are the ideal times of year? Is there a specific time of day, say an early morning, or is it just open to whenever?
I'd say whenever. And my most recent book is called Wild Walking, A Guide to Forest Bathing Through the Seasons. And I take the reader through all the 4 seasons, and the different experiences you can have in each season. I think we're so blessed here with such amazing seasonal change. And forest bathing is a great way to tune into those seasonal changes. Any time of day, nighttime is a great time to forest bathe. They're very big on it in Japan. In fact, they have these benches in some of their forests they're kind of leaning back. I mean, it's a bench with a back on it, but it leans back so that it encourages you to look at the sky. And they lead walks at night, so that you'll be looking up at the moon and the stars. I think forest bathing in the rain is wonderful. I'm going on a forest bathing walk this Saturday at Meadowlark Botanical Gardens, led by Ilana Rubin, who's a forest bathing guide with her organization is called Kindred Nature. And I think it's going to be raining, but being out in the rain is amazing. And Thoreau said, "It is worth the while to walk in wet weather. The earth and leaves are strewn with pearls." And they are. You'll notice these little drops of rain, raindrops are like pearls on the leaves, especially on certain leaves like Virginia bluebell leaves. They really gather the pearls. So, there's something in all kinds of weather. And you don't want to be out in a close lightning storm or really high winds. You got to be safe. But almost any kind of weather, any time of day, any season is good for forest bathing.
Yeah, I was thinking about the leaves of lady's mantle and especially lotus, how they gather the raindrops.
The pearls, yeah.
Yeah, so magical.
It is so magical.
GardenDC will be back after this short break.
Get low-maintenance alternatives to lawns with Ground Cover Revolution by Kathy Jentz. Reducing the lawn is among the biggest trends in homeownership, with an endless stream of homeowners looking for an eco-friendly alternative to a traditional turfgrass lawn. In the last few years alone, over 23 million Americans converted part of their lawn to a natural landscape, and now they're looking to do even more. The biggest challenge to adopting this new ideal of the perfect lawn? Knowing how and when to replace your turf and which plants are the best ones for the job. Ground Cover Revolution is here with all the answers you need, and some you didn't even know you needed. Included are 40 in-depth profiles of plants that are perfect choices for replacing a grass lawn. There are options for sun, for shade, for dry and wet sites, and for various climates around the globe. There are choices that bloom, options that are evergreen, and selections that are deer-resistant. Kathy Jentz has also included an incredibly useful chart that gives you all the specifics on each of the 40 choices for quick reference and to make your ground cover selection process even easier. Whether you want to replace the entire lawn or just reduce the amount of land dedicated to turf, Ground Cover Revolution will help you usher in a new and improved idea of what a beautiful lawn should be. Ground Cover Revolution is available now wherever you buy books, including Amazon.com and Bookshop.org.
I was never really a runner. The way I see running is a gift, especially when you have stage 4 cancer. I'm Anne. I'm running the Boston Marathon, presented by Bank of America. I run for Dana-Farber Cancer Institute to give people like me a chance to thrive in life, even with cancer.
Join Bank of America in helping Anne's cause. Give if you can at BofA.com/supportAnne. What would you like the power to do? References to charitable organizations is not an endorsement by Bank of America Corporation. Copyright 2025.
And so as part of forest bathing, pausing, I'm going to guess it's not a forced march through the woods where you're stopping at certain points, but I'm imagining it's a very slow-paced thing.
Yeah, it is very slow-paced. And the way we kind of format a forest bathing walk is we'll give an invitation, like notice what's in motion, or hold a stone, or listen to the water. And we'll let people have this kind of individual solo experience. And then we'll gather afterwards, usually in a circle, and it's totally optional whether you share or not. We'll go around the circle and we'll invite people to share what they experienced. And that is so enriching, because when you hear, was noticing what's in motion, if that was the invitation, you have noticed amazing things yourself. But then hearing all the other things that people have noticed just enriches your own experience. So we'll do that. So yeah, it's not an aerobic thing. It's definitely not a march, but it's sort of a combination of going out on your own and experiencing aspects of nature, and then getting together as a group and sharing. And it's a very bonding experience with the other people who are with you, because you're all, you're quiet, you're all in this kind of state of mind of just really being tuned into the wonder around you. And it's just a very nice thing to share with other people.
And how long does a usual session last?
Well, it can last, sometimes only an hour, but usually we like to have forest bathing walks last for 2 hours or maybe even 3 hours. But I do want to say that, especially if you're doing this on your own, if you can only go outside for 5 minutes, you can really, you can connect with nature in 5 minutes. It's really a state of mind. I have learned to be so tuned in that as soon as I open the front door, I just tune into the way the air feels. I look at the clouds. I'm just very aware of the birds. I'm aware of the trees around me. And it fills me up, it's rejuvenating. And I know a lot of your listeners are gardeners. I think gardeners know this. I mean, gardening is forest bathing, because you are so tuned in, you're digging in the soil, and that is so therapeutic in every way. And you're watching things grow, and you know the plants, you get to know them as friends. And that's forest bathing. You don't have to call it forest bathing, but it's that very intimate experience with nature.
I'm so glad that you put it that way, because I know a lot of people hesitate before signing up for something like forest bathing because they don't think they have the time. They're too busy for something like that. It sounds kind of airy-fairy, what are
Yep.
they going to get out of it? But also they think, I can't still my mind enough to meditate, so how am I going to get anything out of this?
I know. I hear you on all those points. And I do have to say that a lot of failed meditators, including myself, find that being in nature, it's much easier to calm your mind when you're surrounded by trees that are gently lifting to the wind than when you're sitting alone in your living room.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that, and can I just talk a little bit about the health benefits?
Definitely.
Yeah, so there's been all this research. They really got going in Japan early on. And now these, nature connection, not just forest bathing, but spending time in nature has been researched thoroughly on every continent and maybe even Antarctica. I don't know. But some of the health benefits that have been found from forest bathing or just spending time in nature are lower blood pressure, slower pulse rate, increased heart rate variability, which is a good thing. That means your heart is responding well. Lower cortisol levels. Cortisol is a hormone that, high levels of cortisol can indicate you're under stress. And this is really exciting. A boost to your immune system. There's a researcher in Japan, Dr. Lee at Nippon Medical School, who studied how breathing in phytoncides, which are compounds that plants release to protect themselves from pathogens. And what he discovered is that when we breathe them in, that gives our immune system a boost. It increases the number of NK cells, natural killer cells. And now this research has been repeated in other places around the world. So when you go outside and you breathe among the trees, you are doing something really good for your immune system. And then also quicker recovery from illness and surgery. There was a study in Pennsylvania. I think it was in Philadelphia. I'm not sure. It was in Pennsylvania. The people who could just see trees outside their hospital windows recovered more quickly and needed less pain medication. That's another thing that's been researched. So those are some of the physical health benefits. And then the mental health benefits are really profound. And elevated mood. I'm sure you have had that experience of going out in your garden and all of a sudden you feel happier than you did 10 minutes earlier. Improved focus. There have been studies that, being out in nature helps you to improve your focus. Of course, it helps you to relax, sleep better. And then this one that's been researched that I really relate to is a decrease in ruminative thinking. Do you know what ruminative thinking is?
Mm-hmm.
When you just keep turning something over and over in your mind and you're not really getting anywhere, and it's often a negative thought pattern,
Mm-hmm.
and you just can't let go of it. It's kind of like worrying a bad tooth. When you go out in nature, studies have shown this, and I just know it from my own experience. You can let go of that negative thinking. You can just let go of it. So that is just really a huge benefit. And of course, we're all so anxious now with our tuned into our devices and all the news that it brings us and the things that we have to do, our lengthy to-do lists. So one thing I didn't mention that I should have mentioned right at the top is the first thing you want to do on a forest bathing walk is put your device to sleep. So I tell people, think of the airplane mode setting on your phone as forest bathing mode. You want to disengage from electronics. And, we encourage people to do that at the beginning of walks, but it's a really good thing to do because we're just so wedded to these devices. And there are a lot of things that come through them that make us feel very anxious.
And just breaking that cycle and stepping away even for a few minutes is great stress relief.
Absolutely.
It does remind me of, have you read The Well-Gardened Mind?
No.
That is an amazing book by Sue Stewart-Smith, and she does detail that study you talked about the hospital patients.
Uh-huh.
but she goes into detail of many other studies that talk about being out in the garden specifically, but in many of the studies, of course, just nature, just being by a tree, being able to see a tree, and how that improves people's health.
I'm making a note of it here. The well-gardened mind.
Correct. Yeah. And I saw her, if you can look up her YouTube talk, maybe we'll put a link to that in the show notes. Incredible. It's an amazing book, but yeah, it ties a lot into forest bathing and the principles you're talking about as well. But it's all, she's recounting all the scientific studies and bases for it.
That sounds great. I will definitely get that book.
But it's good to hear about the turning off the device. I had assumed you had to all put them in a bag and leave them at your vehicle or something before you joined the group. You definitely weren't going to be able to bring it along. But, people, it's a crutch for a lot of people. So they want to know it's there in case they need it. But what about accessibility? So a lot of people are not able to walk long distances, or they have bad knees or that type of thing, limitation.
Yes. So a lot of forest bathing walks are really great if you have any mobility issues. Because we move so slowly, we don't cover huge distances. And all of us guides will tell people beforehand what to expect, and everybody's willing to answer individual questions. There are also places that are accessible. Woodend in Chevy Chase, the Nature Forward home, has a wonderful new, totally accessible trail through the woods. There's a place, I don't know if you've ever been out to Sky Meadows. There's a wonderful trail out there that is geared not just for people who are in wheelchairs or using walkers, but also for people who have limited sight. And this is something that as time goes on, there will be more and more walks offered that, where you have limited mobility. And I've just done a lot of things kind of personally, like when my father-in-law had Alzheimer's, he died a few years ago, but I did these walks with him in his wheelchair where I would just wheel it right up to a tree so he could, touch the bark of the tree. And then I would take some pine needles for him to smell and a pine cone for him to hold. And he just loved it. I mean, people who have limited memory, they can still feel so responsive to nature. So if you have loved ones who are in a wheelchair or who have memory issues, I encourage you to go outside with them and just help them to tune in. Even if they're just sitting in one place, you can bring things to them to hold. Encourage them to touch trees and cones and smell flowers. And there's just nothing that's more therapeutic. So, there's so much potential for helping people connect with nature.
Yeah, I think that awakening of the senses, all the senses, is a great part of forest bathing. And I've seen some that I've watched a documentary about forest bathing where they enjoy like an herbal tea or something along the way.
Yes. And I'm glad you brought that up because, that's an element of almost every guided forest bathing walk is to close the walk with tea, like either wild crafted tea or what I usually serve at the end of my forest bathing walks is pure maple sap from the sugar maple tree. And, and I'll serve it hot in cold weather or cold in hot weather. And then we usually have a snack too. So I'll just think of gifts from the trees like walnuts and pure maple candies along with the sap. And it's nice to close a forest bathing walk with tea and also maybe with some poetry. I usually share some of my favorite poems, Mary Oliver and Wendell Berry and Joy Harjo. And then it's also nice at the close of a forest bathing walk to think about what you're going to take back to your daily life from the experience. So I'll usually ask people to share that. Yeah. So the, forest bathing walk kind of has an introductory breathing and slowing down and then a closing tea ceremony. It's really a delightful experience.
Sounds really restful. And Have you had anybody on your forest bathing walks that you've led ever become like emotionally overcome or burst into tears?
I have, yes. That occasionally does happen. And I think it happens because you feel so supported by nature and by the other people you're with that if you're grieving and, maybe have some suppressed grief, it can come to the surface. And you can have an emotional reaction. But
Hmm.
it's a really good time to have that response because you're surrounded by beauty. You're surrounded by people who are sensitive and, will understand. I've also had quite a few people feel that departed loved ones sort of spoke to them during this time, either through a bird or through a tree. They've just felt the presence of somebody that has departed. And that's a really nice thing. Being in nature just brings up a lot of feeling in us, and it brings up feelings of love and loss. So yes, that occasionally does happen on a forest bathing walk.
And I think it is also allowing the space for it.
It is. It is. It's a safe space. It feels very safe. And I worried when I first became a guide, I worried about the kind of woo-woo factor. And some people, when they hear the term forest bathing, they just start chuckling and, well, say things like, well, do you get naked? But I worried, leading walks here in Washington, because people in Washington are, a little buttoned up or buttoned down, whatever the expression is. We're not like known for being wild and crazy. And I'm worried about that. But I have to say that in all the forest bathing walks I've led, and I've probably led over 100 by now, people of all ages, all different types of people, that I don't think anyone has ever expressed discomfort or disbelief or felt uncomfortable. And I think it's because it's so natural for us to be in nature. Most of our evolution was spent completely tuned into nature. And it's only recently that we've separated ourselves from it, which I think is a huge mistake. And so it feels very comfortable and natural. This practice feels very comfortable and natural. And I think people just kind of fall right into it and get it. They just get it right away. No holding back. And it's a really lovely thing.
And do you have any local places in the DMV that you love to do forest bathing? I know we talked about Rock Creek Park and the National Arboretum, and of course Woodend in Chevy Chase.
Yes, so I love to lead walks at the Tregaron Conservancy. I don't know if you're familiar with. Are you familiar with it? Yeah.
Yep. So that was Marjorie Merriweather Post's previous residence in Washington, D.C. before she moved to Hillwood. And it's kind of a recovering, I will call it, public garden.
It is, yes. It's undergone quite a transformation in recent years. And there's a lovely pond there, and there's beautiful stonework and flowers. And then there's a ravine with a stream and beautiful tall trees. So you mentioned Hillwood. I have two friends who lead forest bathing walks at Hillwood, Anna Ka'ahanui and Adria Zeldin. They lead them there quite frequently. That's a wonderful place for forest bathing. I lead walks for Smithsonian Associates behind the castle on the mall, the Smithsonian Castle. I love the garden back there, especially the Moongate Garden, which is part of the Enid Haupt Garden. I've led them at the Botanic Garden and the outdoor gardens there. Gardens are really good places for forest bathing, because you've got, you have the flowers, you have the pollinators, you have the wonderful earthy smells and the smells of the flowers. There's really nowhere that isn't good for forest bathing. In fact, I know one guide who led a forest bathing walk in a parking lot. I mean, you can tune into nature almost anywhere. There are very few places that, don't have a tree or a view of the clouds or, birds or, any aspects of nature. So, and I just encourage people to notice nature wherever you are. and to kind of think of it as your superpower. Connecting with nature is your superpower.
Melanie, how can our listeners contact you to find out more?
So I have a website, melaniechukasbradley.com. And that's the best way. I'm sort of on an event sabbatical right now because I'm working so hard on this new book. So, but I am going to be leading a walk at Oxen Run Park in Ward 8 in May. I will have that on my website soon, on my events page. My books are there on my website, and that's probably the best way. And, if people want to email me, they can find my email address there as well. So that's probably the best way, is through my website.
Terrific. Well, thank you so much, Melanie, for sharing all about forest bathing and your experiences. Is there any last thought you want to share with our listeners?
I just want to share that I think we are so blessed in the Washington area with our parks and our gardens, our tree-lined streets, our communities of gardeners and naturalists and conservationists. There is so much happening in Washington connected with nature. There are so many ways to get involved, to plant trees, to remove invasive plants, to learn more, and so many people who are right there with you, loving nature the way you do. I think that we are extremely blessed here.
Thank you so much, Melanie.
Thank you so much, Kathy. It's been such a pleasure talking with you.
GardenDC will be back after this short break.
In the book The Urban Garden by Kathy Jentz and Terry Spate, you'll find dozens of inspiring and creative ways to grow flowers, shrubs, vegetables, herbs, and other plants in small spaces and with a limited budget. Whether you want to grow on a balcony, rooftop, front stoop, or a tiny urban patio, turn your growing dreams into reality and build a gorgeous and unique garden that showcases your personal style while still being functional and productive. With the ingenious ideas and resourceful tactics found here, you'll be maximizing yields and beauty from every square inch of your space. No matter what you grow, the 101 amazing growing ideas found in the urban garden will turn your tiny urban yard into a treasure trove of green you'll be proud to share with family and friends. Buy your copy today at your local retail bookseller or order it online now at Amazon.com or bookshop.org.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Caladium plant profile. Caladium genus, is a tropical perennial bulb grown as an annual in our region. It has heart-shaped leaves with an array of colorful patterns. There are thousands of named cultivars available in a rainbow of colors and color combinations, including green, white, pink, rose, and red. Caladiums were named the National Garden Bureau's 2025 Bulb of the Year for bold foliage. Caladiums are native to the tropical forests of South and Central America and are hardy to USDA zones 9 and 10. They prefer to grow in consistent moisture and well-drained soils. Most varieties do well in filtered sunlight or light afternoon shade. Some cultivars can tolerate full sun, and others do best in the shade. You can plant caladium tubers outdoors after all the danger of frost has passed and the soil temperatures are 70 degrees Fahrenheit. You can also get a head start by planting them in containers kept inside until they sprout and waiting until early summer to transplant them into the garden. Apply a diluted liquid fertilizer every 2 weeks during the summer growth period. The leaves can be damaged in high winds, by hail, and by slugs chewing holes in them. If a leaf becomes tattered or worn, simply pinch it off at the base. Caladiums love our summer, high heat, and humidity. They will die back during the first real frost or freeze. If you want to overwinter them as a houseplant, be sure to dig them up and pot them to bring them indoors before that frost hits them. Caladium, you can grow that. What's new in the garden this week? Well, my epimediums are flowering, as well as my early tulips. Over at the community garden, we had a freeze scare a couple days ago, but everything looks pretty unscathed, thankfully. In the garden tips that we shared this week, they centered all about clematis. One of them was to use trellis material that is pencil thickness or narrower for clematis vines to be able to grasp and climb on. Upcoming local gardening events in the Washington, D.C. region include the 2025 Leesburg Flower and Garden Festival, which takes place Saturday, April 26th from 10 to 6 and Sunday, April 27th from 10 to 5. The festival is open to the public, free, and the celebration goes on rain or shine. It is in downtown Leesburg, Virginia, and you can find out more about that on the Town of Leesburg's website. And then on May 4th at 4:30 p.m. at the National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C. in the Oprah Winfrey Theater is a film premiere of the documentary Earth, I Thank You, The Garden and Legacy of Anne Spencer. This is being put on by the Garden Conservancy, and tickets are free, but you must pre-register. And that features a panel including Sean Spencer Hester, Executive Director of the Anne Spencer House and Garden Museum, as well as the filmmakers, and an introduction by Pamela Governell, Director of Preservation and Producer at the Garden Conservancy. Find out more about that at the museum's website. And then on Tuesday, May 6th, from 1 p.m. until 4 p.m. at the St. Peter's Episcopal Church on North Glebe Road in Arlington, Virginia, is the Gardeners of Junior League's Wonderland, a National Garden Club small standard flower show. This is free and open to all, and you can go experience what a garden club flower show is like by attending that. Happy gardening!
This is Christy Page with Food Gardening Network with the Easiest Mushrooms to Grow for Beginners by Amanda MacArthur. If you've ever marveled at wild mushrooms popping up after rain, you might be surprised to learn that you can create that same magic at home. No enchanted forest required. Unlike the sun-loving tomatoes and peppers in your garden, mushrooms are the mysterious homebodies of the food world, preferring dark, cozy corners where they can quietly transform everyday materials into nutritious, flavorful additions to meals. And while the idea of growing fungi might sound daunting, some varieties are so cooperative that they practically grow themselves. Don't let those fancy mushroom displays at farmers markets intimidate you. Many easy-to-grow mushroom varieties are perfect for beginners. While some exotic mushrooms demand specialized conditions worthy of a science experiment, the friendly fungi we'll discuss here are practically foolproof. Whether you're working with a simple grow kit, a log at a shady spot, or a bag of straw, success is within reach. Now, are you ready to start your fungal farming adventure? Let's explore the best friendly mushrooms to grow for beginners. First up, oyster mushrooms. They are one of the fastest growing and most forgiving mushrooms for beginners. They thrive on a variety of substrates, including straw, coffee grounds, sawdust, and even cardboard. They grow well in kits, buckets, or logs, making them one of the most adaptable mushrooms for home growers. Next, shiitake mushrooms are hardy and resilient, growing well on hardwood logs or sawdust blocks. While they take longer to mature than oyster mushrooms, they are low maintenance and will continue producing for years when grown on logs. Now, white button mushrooms are the most commonly cultivated variety, often found in grocery stores. They are easy to grow indoors, requiring only a container of compost or manure-based substrate. Now, these mushrooms are the mildest in flavor, making them versatile for various dishes. Next is wine cap mushrooms, also known as garden giants, and they're perfect for outdoor growers. They thrive in mulched garden beds, break down organic material while producing large, meaty mushrooms. They are low maintenance, making them an excellent choice for beginners with any outdoor space. Now is lion's mane. It's a delicious and highly nutritious mushroom known for its lobed, fluffy appearance. It is one of the best beginner-friendly mushrooms because it will grow well indoors on hardwood sawdust blocks. Unlike some other mushrooms, it requires no soil or compost, making it simple to manage. Now, for beginners looking to grow mushrooms at home, these are the 5 varieties that are some of the easiest and most rewarding to start with. Whether you prefer fast-growing oyster mushrooms, umami-rich shiitakes, or the meaty texture of lion's mane, they're easy-to-grow option for every garden. Now, the best mushroom for each setup, best for fast results, oyster mushrooms. They can be ready in as little as 10 days. Best for growing on logs, shiitake or white cap mushrooms win here. Best for indoor growing, white button or lion's mane. And the best for outdoor garden beds are definitely the wine cap mushrooms. With just a little care and the right growing conditions, you can enjoy fresh homegrown mushrooms in a variety of delicious dishes, all without needing a traditional garden space. This has been The Last Word by Christy Page at foodgardening.com.
Thank you for listening to Garden DC. You can become a listener supporter for as little as 99 cents a month by going to the supporter link in our show notes or directly to podcasters.spotify.com/pod/show/GardenDC/support. Another way to support this podcast is to subscribe to our monthly digital publication, Washington Gardener Magazine. To do so, go to WashingtonGardener.com or WashingtonGardener.blogspot.com. You can find Washington Gardener on social media at WDC Gardener on Twitter or X, Instagram, and Pinterest, and on Facebook at Washington Gardener Magazine. And be sure to leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. Please take a minute to share us on social media with #GardenDC so other gardeners can find us too.